Decided to do a little documenting. Hi, I'm Celiska. I recently recorded my upcoming single. It's called Mustard Yellow.
There's a little bluebird on my shoulder and she's singing. Children laughing with me, tell me that I'm mustard yellow.
It's about finding human connection and new friends once you move to a new place and you're feeling overwhelmed. I recorded this song on my own, and this was also the first time that I documented the process through video and through writing a lot of notes afterwards. I hope this video gives you some insight into what recording can look like when you're just starting out and learning as you go. And I'll talk to you about the mistakes that I made so that you don't have to make the same ones, hopefully. Come along and let's get started. Let's talk about recording. Tips for recording vocals, tuning, and intonation. How I got my guitar to sound cleaner and brighter. I'll briefly touch on MIDI as well. Singing. If you haven't tried it, recording by yourself is very awkward and clunky. I'm just trying to wrangle it. Oh my god. Oh my god. Stupid things. Actually, you know what? It's not terrible. The first thing we're going to talk about is microphone placement. So, I recorded the vocals and I was super happy with my take.
There's a little
God, there it is. I spent an hour going through the 2 takes that I did and listening to minute differences that no one will ever recognize but me and picking the best one. And the peas are popping. This filter did not do as much as I was hoping. In this clip of my first attempt, the microphone placement is bad. Essentially, the air coming out of your mouth needs to not be going directly into the microphone. That's what causes a plosive when you have a burst of air. You either want the microphone a bit above, below, or off to the side. I have completely rearranged the microphone. Another tip I got from my uncle was that in the recording phase, you want the vocal feedback playing into the vocalist's headphones to be turned way up.
Laugh until my lungs, laugh until my lungs are done.
Because of the nature of headphones and the way that they change your ability to hear the sound around you, including your own voice, especially when other parts of the mix are playing, you can't hear yourself as well, and that can result in singing out of tune. So those tips can help you sound better, or the vocalist sound better, and sing more in tune. That leads us to talking about tuning and intonation. Obviously, make sure your instruments are in tune. Retune when you need to, especially if you're in a more makeshift studio environment where like the humidity or the temperature is changing between this bed and over here. It's a small space, but it's my space that I'm using and it's great. I had to re-record the vocals at the very end of the song. Because the guitar was slightly out of tune, a few cents off compared to the first time that I recorded the guitar. So record the vocals after everything is in place, including your MIDI, so that your vocals are matching up to whatever's most prominent in the song. If the guitar is slightly off and it's mostly guitar that you're hearing, you'll want to sing in tune with the guitar, whereas once the keys and bass or anything else on MIDI is perfectly in tune with each other, you'll want to match that instead. It's day 2, and it's all about the bass. But it's not, because the intonation is so bad. Listen to this. I'm just not going to use it. So instead, I'm going to use this beautiful set of sounds to do some bassy things. But not that one. So yeah, make sure your instruments are properly intonated before you start your recording session, or pick a different instrument. Let's talk about guitar. When I first recorded the guitar, it sounded pretty muddy and muted. I basically was putting not as much effort as I needed to before and ended up using the method I should have used in the first place. So I just re-recorded the guitar track entirely with one through direct input and one through the microphone at the same time. And now the guitar generally has a better sound that I like more. It sounded bright and clean. That's because I could hear my actual playing on the strings, which sounded bright. Just so you can see my setup here. Now all my microphones are in my way of getting to the recording station. I've got to get the headphones on, so that wire is going to be like coming over here past everything. And I'm going to stand right here. Yeah. How do you know what sounds to use? Of course, you want to select instruments that sound good to you and that give you the feel that you're going for that particular song. Sometimes it can be hard to know what that means. Pay attention to the music that you listen to, music that you like, and music that you want to sound like. What kind of sounds are they using? Another resource I've been loving lately is a podcast called Song Exploder. It's a really cool concept where they interview musicians about a particular song and they give you the separate tracks isolated from everything else. You can then hear how it's pieced together, which is super cool. I've noticed the more that I pay attention to music that I love, the more I notice them using sounds that I would not have thought to pick for my own music. You also might notice that certain sounds kind of sound bad on their own. When you listen to the sound by itself, you might not end up picking it, but they can add really great texture to an overall mix. So one really important tip about MIDI is to find sounds while playing back your song so that you can hear the sound in context. Let's talk about mixing. I don't know why I'm like cuddling this book. How should I do this part of the video? I really didn't plan this. I'm just blabbering. I planned the rest and now I'm just blabbering. So before anything fancy that makes your music sound cool, you want to use things that get the sound clear. 4 of those main tools are EQ, which means equalizer, compression, a de-esser for vocals, and saturation. EQ basically means you can change the quality of the sound by changing which frequencies are loudest or quietest within that sound. Compression sets a limit on how loud a track will get. The compressor tool grabs the sound and pulls it down when it gets too loud. A de-esser de-esses the sound. It's basically another form of compressor, and it takes the frequencies that are most prominent for whatever you want to find. If you do it too much, it starts to sound like especially when there's multiple vocals happening at once. You really want to make sure that there's no pops and that they're all heavily de-essed. Otherwise, it sounds like saturation. I hope I'm explaining this okay. I still am less familiar with it, but it basically mimics like an amp or an analog tool that you would plug something into and gives it a little bit more texture to the sound. Where I'm going to send you for more on sound engineering stuff in general is Dan Worrell. I've only had a chance to watch a few of their videos so far, but they were super informative. If you want to learn more about sound recording, I would recommend checking out Dan Worrell's YouTube channel, which I'll link below. Lastly, I'll talk about automation. Automation basically means recording the dynamic changes that a mixer will make during playback. This can mean panning the instrument from side to side, or increasing or decreasing reverb or other effects. Automation can be part of what makes a song feel more alive. Does the quality or timbre of any of the instruments or sounds change as you're listening to them or at different parts of the song? A general rule for mixing is that no one thing does just one thing. Basically, each tool you add subtly changes the sound, and in the end, the sound is way clearer. Dan Worrell can tell you more about that. So here's me by the 3rd day. I think I'm going to take a break. Had to step away because I've been listening to it and working on it and re-recording stuff and editing stuff and adjusting stuff for the last 8 or 9 hours in my ears now. It just all sounds the same. I listen to it, I'm like, this sounds like a muddy mess. As much as it was partly a frustrating process where I was mostly alone in my attic. I was definitely not alone in the process. Oh, and one last thing, I just have to acknowledge that I've got lots of help and tips from my uncle who's given me lessons. So last spring, I was super lucky to have some time to learn from my uncle over Zoom as a way to connect during the pandemic, and he generously shared some of his knowledge with me and taught me a lot about compressing and virtual instruments and how to get things to sound better. Certainly not doing this on my own. If I was doing it on my own, it would be such a mess. So, if you've made it this far, thank you very much for coming along. I really hope this was worth your while, that it's got your gears moving and is going to help you feel more comfortable gearing up to record your next project. Woohoo! You got it. I'll plug myself, even though it's weird and awkward. Please check out my single if you get the chance. It's called Mustard Yellow by Siliska. It's available on any of the streaming platforms. You can find me on Bandcamp as well. You can follow my YouTube channel. Hopefully I'll start posting more stuff here soon. Subscribe below or wherever you do that. So thank you so much for watching, and maybe I'll be back again sometime and make something else to share. Probably.